Hello friends and welcome to today's video. Now if anyone knows anything about me, it's that I love a good hobby. That's why this channel consists of videos of me doing art in various art forms such as alcohol markers, which is what I did in my last video. I've done Blender to make some 3D art, I've done a lot of digital art, I've done a few doodles on sticky note paper, but now I want to introduce a hobby that isn't necessarily just meant to be art, even though there is a little bit of artisticness with it, but I want to show you some baking that I did. Now on this channel and just with my day-to-day, I tend to gravitate towards like whimsy and anything fantasy related, so my baking is no different. Today I set out with a goal, and my goal was to create a very cute and very whimsical pie. Which you might be wondering why I chose that, but I actually have a backstory. So this last Saturday was actually the day before Easter, and I was on a long car ride just going out to see some family for an Easter celebration. And while I was on this car ride, I decided to scroll through Pinterest, and while I was scrolling, I found a picture of this. And I knew right when I saw this picture that I had to try and create the same thing but for myself. And so then right then and there, I put together a plan that I would make pot pie with a similar looking design, and that pot pie would be a meal for at least 2 days for me and my boyfriend to eat. And now with that explanation out of the way, I think it's time to jump right into the video. Okay, so welcome to the actual baking video. As you can see, I did decide to show my body, but I will not be showing my face to you guys, and that's just a personal choice really to uphold any sense of privacy. So because this is a new type of video, it's a cooking video, I decided to show you some of the ingredients I'll be using today, just to get things started. Now, just as a quick side note before we get started, I would like to say that this is a very new type of video for me, so if things are a little bit awkward, I am sorry about that. And if you're new to my channel, you probably don't even know that usually I don't show my body or my face on this channel. But if you are new, thank you so much for joining us today, and I really hope you enjoy the content and decide to stick around. But first, before I jump into what we're working on today, I've got to go put on this cute little apron I have. Because today's topic is creating a whimsical pie, I thought wearing a whimsical apron was both perfect because I'll be in the kitchen and there'll be flour flying around and whatnot, and also just in general, I think it'll add a little bit to the whimsy of today's video. And now finally on to the baking. And first, all I have to do is just add a little bit of flour to the bowl because I'm making the crust myself handmade. And then with the flour, I add just a tiny little bit of sugar. And then after the sugar, just a tiny little bit of sea salt. The next step is pretty easy. All I have to do is blend. I cut up some butter, blend some more, and then the final ingredient is just to add some ice water. And now I can dump out and start kneading the dough until I can form two separate discs to put into the fridge for 1 hour. So while I'm waiting for that dough to cool off in the fridge, I start by working on the filling for the pie, and I begin with chopping up an onion to the best of my abilities. I immediately add those onions to the pan so they can start sauteing. Then I move on to chopping up the next thing I need, which is potatoes, just in any size chunk really, so I'm not too particular with how I do this. And these also go right to the pan to start cooking because I know potatoes sometimes take a little while to get soft. At this point I add in some wet ingredients, which are just some heavy cream and vegetable broth. For the protein, I didn't want to do chicken or anything, so I went for kielbasa. And then the last ingredient for my pie filling is some carrots that I chopped up, but I also forgot about them until the very last minute, so they were added just a little bit later than I probably would have wanted to. For some additional flavor, I add some spices such as parsley, garlic powder, and so on. But at that point, the filling is pretty much finished, so I start working on the dough. I first want to do the bottom part of the pie, so the bottom dough crust. So all I do is I just roll out this dough to be pretty flat, and then I shape the pie dough to be exactly what I need for my pie. I then allowed myself to go play some League while I waited for the pie filling to cool off. Once it's cooled, I go back to the kitchen and begin cutting out the shapes I need to make the lattice pattern on top of the pie, and I add some gel food coloring to some of the dough so I can start working on the patterns. In that design you saw, there were some red mushrooms, and I'm going for the same exact thing, so I take a little bit to go ahead and color the dough. The red I wanted to be pretty vibrant, so I added quite a bit of that dye and then a little bit of blue to darken it. And then I flatten it, cut out the mushroom shapes I need, and do that twice so I can have two mushrooms. Next up is the green for the leaves that I want to put next to the mushrooms. I add a tiny little bit of red to darken it again, but I don't have to go quite as far with the green. So then I go ahead and I cut out some leaves and throw that on the pie as well. Here's what that design looks like before I bake the pie. The last step I have to do before I actually throw the pie in the oven is I have to do an egg wash on it, and that's kind of what gives the pie that golden brown look. The next step is to simply cook it, so I preheat the oven to 400 degrees, grab the pie, show you the pie, and then I throw it right into the oven. And the lighting might be bad, but now the pie is in. And by the power of YouTube magic, the pie is already done. And here is the final result. I tried to dress it up a little bit in this picture for Pinterest. It's not my best work, but you know, I think the pie itself still looks good. And of course, I actually had to eat this pie, so I also took a picture of this slice before I ate it. I did not record myself eating it though, because I didn't think that was quite necessary. I will say though, overall, the pie was really good. The carrots and the potatoes were a little bit undercooked, so in the future I'm gonna cook those completely all the way through before I put them into the filling. But yeah, overall, I think this project was what I would call a success. Thank you so much if you've made it to this point in the video, and stay tuned because I plan on trying even more hobbies in this little series I just started in the upcoming future.